and you could hear creation happening. Does that make sense? You could hear innovation. You could hear like these guys full of life, full of desire to do something. I don't know. It was translated through the sound of these really poorly recorded songs quite a bit more than I remember. Or when you think about Misfits, you have two eras. You have Michael Graves versus Glenn Danzig, right?
Mm-hmm.
Most people, they just naturally go Danzig. I found it interesting when I was doing this that there was something that I'd never thought of before, and that is that when you listen to each version of this band, you get two completely different things. On one hand, you've got really excellent recordings and really well-written songs, great performances. The Michael Graves era stuff is objectively better music. Now, does that mean that the songs are better or that we like them more? No. But they are, like if you just gave them to somebody that had nothing to do with punk and said, here, listen to these two groups of songs, which one's better? I would venture to say almost everybody's going to go this stuff and point to those two records, right? Because they're similar in sound and style.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, a little more metal, but they're similar. But the recording quality, everything's so much better. But what I found interesting was that when I went back to the Danzig stuff, I was transported back in time. And I could hear something great happening that you don't get with the Michael Graves stuff. You might get great songs, and I personally really enjoy that music. It's hard to do it now, you know, hindsight being 2020 and all, with some of the things that guy's been associated with. But just speaking of his music, I really enjoy it a lot. Like when my first real fandom was the Michael Graves Misfits. But I was transported back in time, going back. I listened to this stuff a lot this week, and you could hear creation happening. Does that make sense? You could hear innovation. You could hear like these guys full of life, full of desire to do something. I don't know. It was translated through the sound of these really poorly recorded songs quite a bit more than I remember. And I would like to have your thoughts on that. Do you ever think about that kind of stuff? What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm kind of similar to you in that my original Misfits was also the Graves Misfits because that was just the Dig Up Ramones video or whatever was just kind of out at about that time, and that was the Misfits that was on the wrestling show was the Michael Graves Misfits. You know, as Misfits, the company kind of became a thing. Michael Graves was at the center of it.
When you're young, you only have a certain amount of stuff you can get to.
Right,
you don't have, you know, it takes time to be able to dig into this stuff on any level. That's why we have gateway bands.
There wasn't as much of it. Like, you know, like I remember I had the collection albums for years. That was the only Misfits like Danzig that I ever owned because it wasn't as easy to get your hands on everything the way like this weekend where the box set is uploaded to Spotify. So literally you can have all the versions of these same songs and hear how they progress very, very quickly. But you got to remember the time difference is kind of jarring because it's like 83 or 84 that the Danzig era is over. It's 97 so it is a totally different time period of both music and society. Like everything is so much different. And I think the Misfits and the brand is already such a thing that, you know, you bring in Graves and he's just there to join something that that's kind of already decided. I feel like in a lot of ways, not that he didn't put his own spin on it because he definitely did, but
I was going to say
than what you're saying though with the growth and stuff where that kind of is something with more potential where it's kind of maybe as good as it could have been in the Graves era too. Like that's, you know, like, are we really mad that we didn't get more Graves albums? Like, yeah, it probably could have been good music, but maybe that was as good of it where, you know, with the original stuff, could that have evolved? I don't know.
So, okay, I actually have an interesting point on that is that I don't think I want more Graves stuff. I'm glad we got two good albums out. We don't have a bunch of bad crap from him. He came in, he did two really great albums and he left. And I think if you go to the question of like, which is better, I hate that question with this specific example because there's very rarely an instance where you're talking about this and they're so different and they mean so much different because you have a group of kids trying to start something then you have an established band that just changes vocalists. And honestly, it's like two different bands almost. Lyrical content aside, it's almost two completely different bands.
It's way less than like we talked about Pennywise with their one album they made with the other singer. That was very much more similar to a Pennywise album than how the way this stuff sounds. That early Misfits stuff, like that is, again, I didn't know the Misfits were really involved in punk until like a few years after the fact, because in this Graves era too, I felt like they were more associated with metal. Like I learned about the Misfits a lot through like bands like Metallica covering them and stuff, and their imagery was more metallic and all that, and it felt like that was where they were stranglehold. Whereas you listen to and I knew of Danzig, and Danzig himself as a solo artist is more associated with metal than punk. But the Misfits themselves are unequivocally, like you said, just basically pop punk. Punk with a Halloween theme all year round. That is what the Misfits are.
I will say this, and I'll try to move on because I got one more question. This shouldn't take as long. I knew this was going to be a long night, dude. This is a very, very fun topic to cover. So when I was 15, that's when the Grave stuff came out, right? Dude, I didn't even know it was a different guy. The recording sounded so different. Like nobody told me that. I was around a bunch of rednecks, man. I bought music that I liked because I liked it. I didn't know to look into it and try to figure it out. It didn't even occur to me to look at who was singing because I just thought it was the same dude. I put it on and went skateboarding. I remember where I bought the first Misfits album from Graves. I bought it at Diamond Head Records on Louetta out here in Klein, right outside of Houston. Bro, I can tell you exactly where this place was at. I remember where I skateboarded at that day. It's crazy how vivid that memory is because that cover is iconic. The songs, bro, I'm telling you, I really enjoy those albums. But I don't think there is a right answer to which is better. I think it just depends on who you are. Because if you're older than me, you're probably just going to say Danzig. If you're young, you're going to say Danzig because that's the right thing to say because you want to be cool. It takes a lot of courage to say that you really like the Michael Graves stuff because most people give people crap for that. And now I don't know that I like it better than the Danzig stuff. I look at it completely different. And after this past week, I definitely think it's a lot slimmer on which I like better. Because I think last week I would have said the Graves stuff. But after going back and re-listening to all this Misfits stuff all week, I was like, dang, I don't know, man, because it was hard. We were starting with a top 5 list. We ended up with a top 10 list. I wasn't going to even have a list. I have a list. Like, it clearly evolved.